Good morning, students. Today is 24th April 2020, and we are going to start with the ninth lesson of your wind chimes, the story of Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. Let me introduce you to the novel Robinson Crusoe. The novel Robinson Crusoe tells the story of a young and impulsive Englishman that defies his parents' wishes and takes to the seas, seeking adventure. The young Robinson Crusoe is shipwrecked and cast away on a remote tropical island for 28 years. The story may be based on the true life events of Alexander Selkirk, a Scottish castaway who survived 4 years on a Pacific island, or Henry Pittman, a political rebel sergeant cast away from a Caribbean penal colony. This classic tale of adventure features cannibals, captives, and mutineers. Some regard it as the very first modern novel written in the English language, launching the publishing industry. Robinson Crusoe, the novel, was published by Daniel Defoe first on 25th April 1719. The first edition credited Robinson Crusoe as its author, leading many readers to believe he was a real person and the book a travelogue of true incidents. Let us know about the author. Daniel Defoe, who was born in 1660 and died on 24th April 1731, was an English trader, writer, journalist, pamphleteer, and spy. He is also famous for his novel Robinson Crusoe, published in 1719, which is claimed to be second only to the Bible in its number of translations. He was one of the earliest pioneers of the English novel, which he helped to popularize in Britain. Now we will read the story thoroughly and thereby introduce ourselves with some unknown words. The synonyms or the meanings and antonyms or the opposites are given herewith for your proper understanding. The synonyms will be represented by the alphabet S within bracket, and the antonyms will be represented by the alphabet A within bracket. You must follow them while reading the text. The story of Robinson Crusoe. I was born in the city of York in England in the year 1632. Now, look, the story is written in first person narrative. That is, the narrator himself is narrating the story. My father was a man of some wealth, able to give me a good home and send me to school. It was his wish that I should become a lawyer, but my head began to be filled very early with nonsensical thoughts of becoming a sailor, and I would be satisfied with nothing but going to sea. Now the narrator's father wanted him to be a lawyer. He tried to give him every kind every kind of provisions to become a lawyer. But the narrator was unwilling to be a lawyer, and a nonsensical. The word here means a silly thought of becoming a sailor, engrossed his mind, and he became determined to satisfy himself with nothing but going to sea. Now, my father advised me against it, but with little effect. One day, being at Hull, I met a schoolfellow who was about to sail for London in his father's ship, and he encouraged me to go with him. And in an evil hour, without asking God's blessing or my father's, I went on board. What does it mean? Now, one day, while the narrator was at Hull, he met one of his schoolfellows who was about to sail for London in his father's ship. Now, his friend encouraged him to follow him to London in his father's ship. The narrator could not resist himself, and without even taking any permission from his father, he went on with his friend to London. I, he went on board, that means he went on traveling to London. And thus his first voyage to the sea began. On the way to London, a storm arose. The ship was wrecked, and we barely escaped with our lives. Now, it was quite uncertain that the ship was wrecked, was broken, and the narrator could barely escape with his life along with some others. I went on foot to London, where I met with the master of a vessel which traded to the coast of Africa. The narrator went on foot to London from there, where the ship was wrecked, and there he met, or better came across, the master of a vessel. Vessel means a large ship, that is barge, which traded to the coast of Africa. He took a liking to me. The master of the vessel liked him, liked Robinson Crusoe, and offered him a chance to go with him on his voyage, which I gladly accepted. When the master of the vessel wanted Robinson Crusoe to accompany him to the coast of Africa, Robinson Crusoe, who was, who was at that time mad of voyaging, accepted, gladly accepted the master's proposal and went on with him to the coast of Africa. We set sail, and after a few days, a great storm came up. and the ship was, was tossed about for many days until we did not know where we were. Now, what happened after a few days? Well, the ship was caught in a great storm, and it the storm took the ship to the direction which was quite unknown to the narrator or the crew members of the ship. Suddenly, we struck a bank of sand, and the sea broke over the ship in such a way that we thought it would break into pieces. Now, what happened as the ship was out of control? So, once it struck on the bank of a sand, and the sea broke over the ship in such a way that all of them on board thought that the ship might broke into pieces. In this moment of despair, we lowered a boat into the raging sea. After we had been swept 4 or 5 miles, a huge wave struck us so furiously that it overset the boat at once. In order to escape, in that moment of despair means sorrow, the narrator, along with some crew member, lowered a light boat into the raging sea. With the help of the boat, they swept along for 4 or 5 miles, but they were quite unlucky because a huge wave struck the boat so furiously, means so fiercely, that it overset the boat at once, means the boat overturned. Though I swam well, the waves were so strong that I was dashed against a rock with such force that it left me unconscious. Now, Robinson Crusoe swam well, started to save himself, that means wanted to stay alive. So he started swimming. The waves were very strong. He had to, he had to swim the against those strong waves. That, but once he was dashed against a rock with such a force that it left him unconscious. That Robinson Crusoe was almost senseless, but he recovered a little before the waves returned. But it means Robinson Crusoe was quite lucky enough that very in a short time he regained his consciousness and running forward got to the mainland safely. Then I began to look about to see if any of my companions had escaped, but I could see no sign of any of them. When Crusoe reached the shore, there he tried to find out any of his companions who might be alive, but he was very unlucky to find none of them, or he could see none of them there. The night was falling, so I climbed into a thick bushy tree to sleep, not knowing but afraid that there might be hungry wild beasts there. As the night was falling, so he climbed into a thick bushy tree to sleep. Because the island was strange, he could find no one around, means around the island or how far he could see. So he was also afraid of being attacked by some hungry wild beasts. In order to save himself or to keep him safe, he climbed up a thick bushy tree to sleep for that night. When I awoke next morning, the sea was calm, and I could see the ship about a mile from the shore. And when the tide ebbed, I swam out to her. When I awoke next morning, the sea was calm on that day, and I could see the ship about a mile from the shore. Now, when actually, what is ebbed? What does the word ebbed means? Flowed back into the sea. That means you must have observed in the river that the water sometimes ebbed. That means flowed back means goes down. The level of water goes down, and during high tide it comes up. That is what we say. Means we are very familiar with saying high tide or low tide. But here, when similarly, when the water ebbed, Robinson Crusoe could see from the shore the ship, that means the wrecked ship. I swam out to her. Robinson Crusoe immediately swam to the ship because I found that all the provisions were dry. At that time, as the water went down, the ship came up the water, and the provisions. What is provisions? That means food and supplies, especially for a journey. All right. So those food and supplies were dry. As I was very hungry, I filled my pockets with biscuits and ate as I went about other things, for I knew that I must take all that I could from the ship. Now he was lonely. He did not have any provision, and rather the island was also without any, and in the island there were no companion. So Robinson Crusoe had to do everything by himself. In order to deal with his life, what he did, he collected as much provisions as he could from the ship to the shore. Then I went down the ship's side and tied them together, and laying a few short pieces of planks upon them, I made a raft strong enough to bear a moderate weight. Now, what Robinson Crusoe did, he went to the ship's side and tied them together. All right. And after that, planks means pieces of wood, he short pieces of wood upon them in order to make a raft. What is raft? Raft is actually a flat floating boat. All right. Now, the raft was, according to Robinson Crusoe, the raft was strong enough to bear a moderate weight. That means It could carry a moderate weight to the shore. Next, I lowered upon it three seamen's chests. Chests, you know what? It is almost means where we keep things or our belongings inside. They are generally locked and filled them with provisions, means whatever is required. After a long search, I found the carpenter's chest. I told you, a chest is actually a large, strong storage box, which means uh, which can be locked as well, which was a great prize to me. I lowered it upon the raft and then secured a supply of guns and gunpowder. For security, Robinson Crusoe carried guns and gunpowder. With this cargo, I started for the shore. After taking all these things, he started for the shore. Means he started rowing for the shore, and with a great deal of trouble, succeeded in landing them safely. Robinson Crusoe had to take some trouble, or the journey from the ship to the shore, along with those belongings in the raft, was not so easy. It was troublesome. It was troublesome, but Robinson Crusoe was ultimately successful in landing them safely on the shore. My next part was to view the country and pick a proper place to store my goods. Now, Robinson Crusoe thought that he must he must look around the country and short fodder means that means to find out a proper place to pack store means to pack his goods. I knew not yet where I was, whether on the continent or on an island. Means actually Robinson Crusoe did not have any idea about the land where he ultimately came. He could not even think that it was actually a continent or an island. There was a hill not over a mile away, very steep and high, and I climbed to the top of it and saw that I was on an island, barren, and as I saw, good reason to believe uninhabited. So Robinson Crusoe found that there was a hill steep with steep sides. All right, that means sharp rising sides, and it was not over a mile away. So Robinson Crusoe decided to climb to the top of the hill and saw that he was, and when he reached the top, from the top he looked around and he found that the land where he was in at that time was actually an island. The island was barren. Barren means unproductive. All right, that means there there was no cultivation. It was completely unproductive land. And as Robinson Crusoe saw, means for good reason that it was quite uninhabited or empty. That means there was no population. All right, means none of means they could find none around, means none of the population around, or better I would say, not a single person in that island. It was totally uninhabited or depopulated. Means there was not a single man in that island. every day for 12 days. All right, means every day for 12 days. Means from the first day and the following 12 days. I made a trip to the vessel. He made trip to the vessel, that means the wrecked ship, bringing ashore all that I thought would be useful to me. And he started collecting from the ship whatever he thought would have been necessary or would have been useful to him. The night of the 12th day, there was a violent wind. But on the 12th day, means 12th night, I would rather say, there was a violent wind, that means a storm. And when I awoke in the morning, the ship was nowhere to be seen. And probably because of that violent wind or storm, the ship might have been carried by the strong waves or the water current deeper into the sea. And so Robinson Crusoe said that he could not see the ship anymore. It was means the ship was the ship completely disappeared after the 12th night. Then I gave my thought to providing myself with a safe place to stay. When Crusoe saw that he had no way to escape from this island, he gave up the idea of escaping. Rather, he started to think how to provide himself a safe place where he could stay. I found a little plain on the side of a hill, whose front towards the plain was very steep and had in it a hollow place like the door of a cave. Now, Robinson Crusoe found a little plain on the side of a hill, whose front towards the plain was very steep and had in it a hollow place. All right. So it could be a shelter for him, a good shelter, like the door of a cave. So Robinson Crusoe selected this particular place to build, means to make something or make some provision for his stay. Here I resolved to pitch my tent. Robinson Crusoe first inspected the place, he became satisfied with the place, and then he resolved, that means decided, to pitch, that means to set up his tent there, which I made of sails and I had brought from the ship. Actually, the tent which he was about to set up was made of sails, that means the sails of the ship. Robinson Crusoe brought the sails from the ship and then he set those sails up as his tent. Around it, I drew a half circle and made a fence with the planks of the raft, making a kind of fortress. Now, around it, that means around the cave, I drew a half circle and made a fence. Actually, he fortified his cave. He fortified the cave, means making a kind of fortress. You must have seen fortress or castle like Red Fort of India. Means you will see that they are bound, means there is a boundary all around the fort. Similarly, Robinson Crusoe also protected his shelter with fence all around in half circle. I left no entrance but used a short ladder to go over the top, and when I was in, Robinson Crusoe did not leave any entrance. Or that means there was no door within the fence. He used a ladder, and the ladder means short ladder, which helped him to go over the top to the other side of the fence. Then I enlarged the hollow place I have spoken of until I had made quite a cave, which served as a cellar for my house, and I called it my castle. Then Robinson Crusoe started enlarging his cave. That means expanding the hollow place, that means the cave, so that it could have enough space for him to live in, and made quite a cave which served as a cellar. That means, what is cellar? It is an underground room for storage for his house, and he called it his castle. Now, it became his castle, a very protected castle, which would help him to keep away from wild animals, or as well as I can say enemies if there was any. I have found aboard a dog and two cats. When Robinson Crusoe came from the ship, he brought along with him two cats, and the dog swam with him. I carried the cats ashore on the raft, but as for the dog, he swam ashore himself, and was a trusty servant to me for many years. The dog served Robinson Crusoe for many years. Besides, the company, that means the friendship of these pets, means of these pets means of the cat of those two cats and the dog, I had that of a parrot, which I caught and which I taught to speak, and it often gave me much amusement. Now Robinson Crusoe got hold of a parrot, and he trained him to speak, and that was the parrot was a cause of amusement to him, that is entertainment to him in his lonely life. I went out every day with my gun to hunt for food. Now, in order to find means in order to search for his food, every day he had to go out with his gun to hunt for his food. I found that there were goats running wild on the island, and often succeeded in shooting one. Robinson Crusoe found that there were wild goats, and Robinson Crusoe was also success means was always successful in shooting one of those bows for flesh. But I saw that my ammunition would in time all be gone, and that to have a steady supply of goat's flesh, I must breed them in flocks. Now Crusoe found that in this way, if he go on hunting goats, what would happen? A day might a day would come when he would have left with no ammunition. His ammunition would come to an end. That means bullets or shells which helped him in hunting would come to an end. So, in order to have a steady supply, that means regular supply of goat's flesh, he started breeding them. That means multiplying goats in flocks. All right, that means in order to have steady supply, that means unending supply of goats, means of flesh, Robinson Crusoe started breeding them in flocks. So I set a trap to take some alive and succeeded in catching several. Crusoe set a trap and successfully caught some of those goats. He took them home or in his castle. I enclosed a piece of ground for them to run in, and in course of time had a large flock which furnished me with all the meat I needed. I enclosed a piece of ground for them. Actually, he made a place for those goats to stay safely. Enclosed means he covered those places, means he actually protected the place with pens, with a large place with pens for the breeding of those goats. And in course of time, had a large flock. And Crusoe, within a short time, he means had a large flock, which provided him, that means which furnished, that is, provided him with all the meat he needed. That means Crusoe was now, Crusoe became certain of his food then. Alright, Crusoe was then, means Crusoe became certain of his food. Now he is not uncertain of his food or flesh. I saved the skins of all the creatures I shot and dried them. Now, Crusoe never wasted the skin of those creatures he shot and dried them. That means in order to protect them, he dried them and keep them means dried them under the sun, or better tanned them for future use. And when my clothes were worn out, replaced them with garments made of leaves. Now, when Crusoe's clothes were worn out, that means became ragged after some time, then he replaced his clothes with garments made of these, and he made those garments himself. Then, at the expense of a great deal of time and trouble, I made an umbrella also of skins which I needed much to keep off both sun and rain. Making umbrella is not an easy job. So, Crusoe said that with plenty of time and trouble, that means he tried and tried, and finally he could make an umbrella out of those skins, which helped him to avoid sun and rain. For a long time, I brooded over the idea of making a canoe of the trunk of a tree, as the Indians do, and at last set to work at the task. Now, deeply thinking about making a canoe. Canoe is a long pointed boat made of tree trunk, and they are generally used by the Indians. And Crusoe finally decided to set work at the task of making a canoe. I cut a large tree and spent over 3 months shaping it into the form of a boat. Now, Crusoe took 3 months because he carved out wood from the middle. That means made a hollow in, means in the middle of the tree trunk. Then he, in the shape of a boat, and finally he was succeeded after trying for 3 months. Then I found it too large to move to the water. In his first attempt, the canoe that he made was not quite suitable, and it was not suitable for floating in floating on the water. I afterwards made a smaller one and succeeded in launching it and set out to make a tour around the island in it. Crusoe Crusoe became experienced when he found that a large canoe was not fit for floating. He, he again tried and made a smaller one. This smaller one was floated successfully, and Crusoe set out to make a tour with that canoe around the island in that canoe around the island. But when I had been out 3 days, such a storm arose that I was near being lost. Now, on the third day, Crusoe had to face a storm, and he was nearly being lost because of the canoe. At last, I was able to bring my boat to the shore in a little cove, and there left it, and went across the island on foot to my castle. Crusoe was successful to bring his boat to the shore in a little cove. That means in a little cove means bay, and there he left the canoe and went across the island on foot to means he returned back on foot to his castle, not caring to go to sea again in such an unsafe vessel. And after that, he never took chance to go to the sea again in such dangerous vessel. That means in such canoes. All right, that is means he thought that they were not quite safe enough to go into the sea. So he gave up his idea of going to the sea, going deep into the sea with such unsafe vessels. There we come to the end of the lesson. Hope you have enjoyed the lesson. I am Devashish Ghosh, your English teacher, and I advise you to stay home and stay safe. Thank you.